CNN projects Donald Trump wins the presidency.
It's the Batshit.
I'm very highly educated. I know words. I have the best words.
Crazy Pants.
It is time to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C.
Super Show.
But we are transferring power from Washington, D.C. and giving it back to you, the people.
Helping you navigate this batshit crazy pants world.
So I got a president who likes me now.
Look at those hands. Are they small hands?
Are you totally deranged?
And now, your bus driver, Matt Stevens.
Crazy. But that's how it goes. Hello. Millions of people. It's great. Was there a better voice than Ozzy? I'm not sure. Maybe Led Zeppelin? I don't know. But he's up there. He's in the conversation, as we like to say. Anyway, welcome to the Batshit Crazy Pants Super Show. I am, of course, your host, Matt Stevens. You can always follow me on the Twitter at the Matt Show 365. You can do the same at Facebook at the Matt Show or Facebook, blah, 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 Matt Show 365. We are on Spreaker.com. If you're listening via iTunes, you can listen live at Spreaker.com. Search the Matt Show. See how it's all the same? So easy. Anyway, welcome to another episode. We got so much to get to today, but first, as always, two reminders.
Earmuffs.
And of course,
Hail Trump!
indeed.
Hail Trump!
So yeah, hail Trump. And we got a lot to get to today because there's a lot going on. We are not going to be talking about some of the changes made to the healthcare thing. You can watch Rachel Maddow and the news shows for that. They'll have their graphs and it'll all be exciting. We are going to talk about the laptop ban because there's another angle of this we're not looking at, or I've seen a few places like The Intercept talk about. We're going to go back to an article they wrote in February about the meeting of the big three airlines. We're going to talk a little bit about that. The gun industry is hitting a lull after the Obama boom. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and have some fun. And boy, folks, the amount of people on the right in the media who are in trouble right now is unfriggin-leavable. So we're going to talk about that, which is really great. We got Napolitano. We got Tommy Loren, or however the hell you pronounce her name. Who's T-O-M-I? Come on, guys. Really? Come on. Really? And, of course, InfoWars and Breitbart are under investigation as well. But first, I'm going to start there because I'm so sorry. I forgot to say this yesterday. I feel like an idiot because I forgot to say it, and it really bugged me. And last night, I almost did another show just so I could say this, but I didn't. I figured I would just lead with the show today. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about the hearings that began with Comey and what he talked to and he said. And what we found out was that they've been fucking investigating Trump since July. Since July. Now, we all sort of knew, right? Like, we've all been talking around this for months that we think that the FBI is investigating them, but we didn't have any proof. They hadn't said they were. But you come out now, you flaunted the fucking Hillary Clinton investigation around like it was like the smartest kid in class. You were like, instead of having, my son is an honor student at yada yada school, or my daughter's an honor student at yada yada school, we're investigating Hillary Clinton's emails. That's what you did. That's what you did. When you were also investigating the other guy for much worse. Because what Hillary did was stupid. What Hillary did was ignorant. What Hillary did was they were flippant on their security. She didn't collude with a foreign government to manipulate elections. She was just dumb with her security on her emails. And you flaunted that like it was the big story. No, James. Your press people in the FBI are idiots. Because the big story is that one of the candidates that you were investigating wasn't talking to Russia, and one of the candidates that you were also investigating but neglected to talk to us apparently was enough for you to start investigating them in July. So Comey, you, my friend, will be remembered in history as one of the reasons that Donald Trump is president. You are not the only reason. You are not the only reason. There was a lot of other reasons, and one of those reasons is Hillary Clinton. Shut up. One of those reasons was Hillary Clinton and her campaign. also you, James. Mr. Comey, as it were. It's also you. Instead of playing things fair, you decided to do other things. And so now we have Donald Trump as president. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Healthcare, in a roundabout way. We're talking about it today because last week, a great article in Forbes. This was from the March 13th, and it's by Chris Ladd, who's a recovering Republican, it says at the head of his bio. Chris Ladd, so this is for Forbes magazine, and he talks about, he finally answers my question. I've been asking this question for years, and nobody's been able to answer it. The book, What's the Matter with Kansas, was a great answer to some of it, but it didn't answer all of it. It didn't make sense, right? Because to look at people who are poor and doesn't matter the color of their skin, for them to vote for people like Trump and George W. Bush and Mitt Romney makes no sense when you look at it from the outside, not understanding what they've lost over the years. Mr. Chris Ladd, contributor to Forbes magazine, points it out to us and lets us know what's going on. And he does so, and I'm going to read a little bit from the article. I'm going to sort of paraphrase. I'm going to read a little bit from it. You can go to Forbes. It's from March 13th. Chris Ladd is the author, L-A, 2 Ds at the end, L-A double D, okay? And he talks about a great Washington Post article that if you haven't read, there's a link to it actually in the article where it talks about a guy by the name of Clyde Graham, who was an unemployed coal worker who voted for Trump, even though he knew that he thought he might lose his health care, but he voted for Trump anyway because he'd rather have a job than the Affordable Care Act. And that's where we start. And with a term that I've never heard before. Now, I'm sure this term has been around for a long time. I am not saying that this is the first it's ever been uttered. I have just never heard this term. And maybe it's because the circles I walk in, because I don't know a lot of suburban white rich people. I don't. I live in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. Most of the people I work with are poor or are waiters or work in restaurants. I don't know a lot of rich white suburban people. I know my parents, but they're not rich. I mean, they're probably rich by some standards. So he talks about this phrase called white socialism, and that Americans with good jobs live in a socialist welfare state that's more generous to them than it is to us. It's also more generous than Europe because Europe does the same thing, right? So the European countries, they take money from the masses and they distribute them. The difference between them two, if you can understand what the difference is, it's very simple. In those countries, it gets distributed evenly. Our approach does not. Okay? And so he talks about, I'm going to pull this right from the article, okay? He talks about, I'm going to paraphrase this part, and then the next part with the numbers, I'm going to talk right from. So he talks about first about where he lives, his neighbors, and that sort of thing, and how if you talk to them about the social welfare state or social welfare, if you talk to them about that, they look at him and get mad because it pisses them off that there are people on welfare. They've earned what they've got, okay? They worked hard for what they had. They weren't given anything by the government, even though your retirement, your health insurance, your primary, secondary, and advanced educations, daycare, commuter costs, mortgages, other things are covered in a form of white socialism, which is also known as tax breaks or tax forgiveness or whatever you want to call it. So he talks now. My family's generous health insurance costs about $20,000 a year, of which we pay out only $4,000 in premiums. The rest is subsidized by taxpayers. You read that right. Like virtually everyone else on my block who isn't old enough for Medicare or employed by the government, my family is covered by private health insurance subsidized by taxpayers at a stupendous public cost. Well over 90% of white households earning over the white median income, about $75,000, carried health insurance even before the Affordable Care Act. Companies can deduct the cost of their employees' health insurance. And employees are not required to report that benefit as income. It's lost money. But if you don't have a job that has health insurance, you don't get into that. You don't get into that. See, the person who gets health insurance just through their job, that's extra earned money because they're not spending that money on health care. But they don't pay taxes on that. You pay actual money. They pay nothing. They get tax breaks. You get nothing. $400 billion annual transfer of funds from state to federal treasuries to insurers to provide coverage for the Americans least in need of assistance. When you talk about the subsidies, so the company's that can deduct it and the employee who doesn't have to write it off, that's $400 billion. He talks about when he buys a house, okay? The interest that he can pay on a mortgage is deductible up to $1 million of debt. That costs the Treasury $70 billion a year. That would be more than enough to fund the food stamp program. His private retirement savings, also tax deductible, is another $75 billion. So instead of funding government programs with tax credits and deductions, by doing that, this is what they're doing. They're funding government programs by offering tax credits and deductions rather than spending. So you have a safety net that's growing more and more every year for the people who don't need it, while the one that's lessening and lessening every year, but the one run by the actual government is lessening and lessening every year for the people who actually do need it. He also goes on to say you don't need to be wealthy to participate. All you need to do is gain access to socialism for white people is a good corporate or government job. And if you think about it, that explains it, right? That explains the Rust Belt, the voters who weren't Bernie Sanders people, who were still Trump people, even though Bernie Sanders was offering stuff that's free. They didn't want his free stuff because everybody had his free stuff. Everybody gets his free stuff. See, with their free stuff, nobody else gets it but them. We'll get to why it's called white socialism as well. So all these people who voted for Donald Trump, they voted because they wanted something that they won't even be getting anymore. Very few companies, except maybe the government, very few companies offer full medical. I'm sure some do. I'm sure there are some that do. I've worked in restaurants my whole life. They don't give a shit. Show up to work sick or you're fired. They don't care. Get everybody else in the world sick, start the zombie apocalypse. They don't care. You're fired. So I don't know what this is like. This is all new to me. I've been a waiter my whole life. Trying to do other things, but still nonetheless a waiter my whole life. And when you think about all these people that you're like, I don't understand. Why would you want that? And the reason they don't want socialized medicine is because they had it. They had it. And when they lost their jobs, when they signed NAFTA and all these other trade deals and all their jobs went overseas, then they lost these jobs and they lost their health care. They don't want the new way we want to do it, which is universal health care. They want the old way where only the people who had the jobs got the health care and only people who had certain jobs got the health care. Why is it called that? Well, because it's exactly what it sounds like. After World War II, Truman, he introduced all the plans, Social Security, all that stuff. He also introduced a universal health coverage in 1945. It was much like Social Security. You impose a tax, and that tax would universally fund a pool to pay for health insurance for everyone. Instead, 9 years later, Congress laid the foundation of the social welfare system we enjoy today. They rejected Truman's idea of universal private coverage in favor of a program controlled by employers while publicly funded through tax breaks. And what it did was it gave the corporations leverage in negotiations with unions. Because now you have something that you can give, right? Now you have something to negotiate with. That's a huge thing. Could you imagine what workers would be willing to give up for health care? huge. And when you're getting subsidies on top of it, it doesn't matter. But when this started, the people who made and had those jobs were all white men, which is why today white families are twice as likely as African Americans to have access to private health insurance, and 2/3 of white children are covered by private health insurance, while barely 1/3 of black children enjoy the benefit. And so when you hear somebody say, when somebody's a blue-collar worker, when they talk about jobs being lost and their health care being lost, and you hear Bernie Sanders say, well, we want to socialize medicine, and they pish-posh it, it's because they don't want socialized medicine. They want their socialized medicine, their socialism, where you pay taxes, but depending on how many kids you have or how far you commute or the job that you do or the insurance that you get or whatever, however you've achieved in life through maybe something being given to you, maybe you earning some of it, you get to get tax breaks for all of that stuff. But if you don't have that stuff, you don't get those breaks. And that, folks, is what we call a rigged system. Because here's the bigger problem. The gap is getting wider. So those workers and bosses who in 1945 worked together to come to a common goal of making money for themselves, the gap between those workers and those bosses has now widened so much that they're not working together anymore. So the ideals that you hold on to, the things that you remember maybe from your dad having as a kid or even you having when you first started working, they don't really exist anymore on a grand scale, not the way they used to. Right to work states have a lot to do with that. Sending jobs overseas have a lot to do with that. Union jobs being lost have a lot to do with that. Now, part of that is greed on the union side. I'll be the first to admit it. But part of that, most of that, is also greed on the employer side. It's because it's always what it comes down to is greed. And this is greed. This is white greed. Why they voted for Trump, because they think by having Donald Trump be president, they are going to get a job back, get health benefits given to them, and then they'll be able to enjoy all the tax breaks they once had. But that is not welfare or socialism. That is just the way we do things. That's how we do it. A tax break, I earned that money. A tax break isn't welfare or socialism. Well, it is. The government is giving you money. Whether they never received it first is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. And so we're going to live in this world. You know, it's like what I talk about when I talk about how Republicans always are for getting rid of things like the death tax and stuff like that because they all think they're going to be millionaires one day. These people got to get it through their heads that the world is not the same as it was 20, 30, 15, 10 years ago. It's just not the same. Those jobs aren't coming back. You might get a job, but you know what you're going to have now? Now it's going to be, you're going to be temporary worker with blah, 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 where they're not going to have to give you health insurance, and you're still going to need Obamacare, and it's not going to be there for you. It's not going to be there for you. It's not going to be there for you. Trump care is, which means it will not be there for you. And so your ignorance and stupidity and hanging on to an ideal that doesn't exist anymore is really what will end up being your undoing. It will. And you did it to yourselves. There's no other way to look at it. No other way to look at it. Homeland Security. That's right, kids. It's Homeland Security time here. Okay. Department of Homeland Security will no longer allow passengers to carry electronics onto flights to the U.S. from 10 major airports in the Middle East and North Africa. The airports are located in Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, Morocco, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. 2 in Saudi Arabia and UAE. None of them American or European. And none of our airlines have direct flights from there, so none of our airlines will be affected. It was communicated at 3 a.m. on Tuesday, and they have 96 hours to comply, or else they won't be able to land in this country. It's on larger electronics because they have been getting threats that terrorists are going to use laptops or cell phones or tablets, blah, 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 printers as bombs. They're still going to allow them on the plane, so just be very clear about this. They're still going to allow them on the plane. They're just going to be in the cargo hold. Because, apparently bombs can't go off in the cargo hold. Those are super secret places where bombs can't go off. The other reason that they've never really done this before is because that they've always been afraid that if you have that many lithium-ion batteries in the same place, that you have a chance of fire breaking out. So you have all these things, right? And when it comes out, it's like, oh, this is Homeland Security. They're telling you this because it's for your safety. It's because terrorists are talking about using laptops and cell phones as bombs. But if you look deeper, and when I look deeper, not to sound creepy, I usually go to The Intercept because they usually talk about these things. Now, to get a little backstory here, we're going to take you back to an article from them on February 9th by Lee Fang, which talks about when the big three airlines went to meet with Donald Trump to talk to him about many things. They had started a campaign called Open and Fair Skies. They wanted to talk about many things, but the thing they wanted to talk about was subsidies by the Gulf carriers. Emirates, Etihad Airways, and Qatar Airways. These are airlines that are partially, I guess, run by or owned, or I guess, yes, by their governments, and they get subsidies to help them run. The Gulf carriers have received over $50 billion in documented subsidies from their government owners since 2004. This is a recent letter by the chief executives of the big three to Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. We are confident that the Trump administration shares our view on the importance of enforcing our open skies agreements, ensuring that U.S. airlines have a fair and equal opportunity to compete in the international market and protecting American jobs. Here's the problem with this. Yes, do those companies have a huge advantage? Yes, absolutely. They can probably charge less money because of the subsidies that they get. But don't for a fucking second think that our airlines don't get subsidies. They do. It just may not be as straightforward and as clear. All three, if not a few of the three of these airlines, have all filed for bankruptcy and used the bankruptcy rules to get around paying former debt and stuff like that. That's a subsidy. Now, it was after 9/11, but they were given subsidies after 9/11. And then, of course, because they said this, right? So then, here we go. So Richard Anderson, who was the Delta Airlines chief executive, was asked by Richard Quest of CNN about the Gulf carriers' claim that the big three received favorable government treatment using bankruptcy protection. It's a great irony to have the United Arab Emirates from the Arabian Peninsula talk about that, given the fact that our industry was really shocked by the terrorism 9/11, which came from terrorists from the Arabian Peninsula that caused us to go through a massive restructuring. Okay. But that doesn't change the fact that you receive subsidies. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter why. And to blame those countries, 15 of them were from Saudi Arabia. So you have this meeting with these big three coming up and saying that the biggest problem we have is that these airlines from these countries are getting these unfair subsidies, and we need something to help stop. We need something to make it stop. Well, we'll make it stop. People will stop flying their airlines because they can't take laptops on there. Because here's the thing, American planes fly through those airports, right? But they fly to other ones first. They never do direct flights. Now, apparently Canada is coming up with one of these, and so is Britain is coming up with one of these. But if you know anything about this sort of thing, you'll know, and the Intercept talked to a bunch of people. Now, this is from the other day, where we have Richard Schiff coming on and saying, as ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, I'm continually briefed on the changing threat climate and the most recent intelligence on our enemy's attack on us and our friends and allies. Over the weekend, I received an additional briefing by the Department of Homeland Security, and I fully support the new security precautions implemented by the department over the weekend. These steps are both necessary and proportional to the threat. We know that terrorist organizations want to bring down aircraft and have continued to employ creative ways to try and outsmart detection methods. The global aviation system remains a top target, and proper security requires that we continually adapt our defenses. But you're not adapting your defenses, because you're not saying you can't have a cell phone on the plane. You're not saying you can't have a laptop on the plane. Why? Is it because they can go through your book bag before it goes on the plane when you don't see it? You're telling me that we don't have equipment that can tell the fucking difference between a laptop and a bomb when you put it under an X-ray? We don't have that? You're fucking joking me, right? I mean, you're joking me. You're telling me that if I put my laptop into one of those X-ray conveyor belt things, that the person running it can't tell the difference between what a bomb looks like and what a fucking laptop looks like? Nicholas Weaver, who's a researcher at the International Computer Science Institute, said, from a technological perspective, nothing has changed between the last dozen years and today. That is, there are no new technological breakthroughs that make this threat any more serious today. And there is certainly nothing technologically that would limit this newfound threat to a handful of Middle Eastern airlines. So what do we have here? I mean, we have, well, if you want to know, so here we go. Okay, so the United Kingdom enacted theirs, okay, but the UK ban includes 14 airlines, including 6 based in the UK, and it does not include airports in Qatar or the United Arab Emirates. And Canada is weighing restrictions as well. So that makes you think it's for Homeland Security. The problem is that the science doesn't back it up. The science doesn't back it up. And if we are not prepared, if we have not thought of this already and have equipment to read this stuff, what the hell are we doing? What are we doing? Because if you think that it's okay that I could make a laptop into a bomb and get it through one of those conveyor belt things, it's not okay. It's not okay. What are we doing it for? Seriously, if those things don't work on that level, what the fuck are we doing? Just to make sure I don't have a knife? You really? You serious? Have anybody pull a knife on a plane ever again and see what happens? And I guarantee you, if those people on those planes knew what those people had in mind for them, knew that they were flying them right into a building, I guarantee you they would have risen up and squashed them. But they were probably told lies. I'm talking about 9/11, by the way. They were probably told lies. If you comply with us, and nobody gets hurt. We will let you go when we land. We just want these demands. Like every other movie, every other report of hijacking a plane they've ever seen. But try it again? Are you kidding? I know if I'm on that plane, I'm getting up. But with Donald Trump, it is always one thing. It is always one thing. Follow the money. Follow the money. Because our airlines get subsidies too. Now, maybe not as much as theirs, but they do get subsidies. And so this travel ban looks good from a Department of Homeland Security perspective because you see England doing it, you see Canada thinking about doing it, but in the end, it is unnecessary. And no matter if you think it is a problem from a Homeland Security issue, it also helps our airlines that you did this. It also helps them. And hurts the ones that you did it to. Just saying. I mean, seriously, I'm going to say it one more time. If you're telling me that the stupid x-ray machine that I put my carry-on bag through can't tell the difference between a laptop and a bomb, then what the hell am I doing? Why am I taking off my shoes? What am I doing? Folks, all you have to do is watch TV to see all the threats that are coming and prepare for them. You should have been prepared for this. This is something that shouldn't even be a problem. It shouldn't even be a problem. But apparently it is. On to one of our favorite topics, which we don't really plan on talking about too much during the Trump administration, unless, there is another mass shooting and blah, 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 is the fact that the gun industry is seeing a downturn. Now, business is cyclical, and then we all understand how these things work. But the gun industry had enjoyed such an enormous boom since 2009 that the rollback is kind of shocking when you think about it. The idea that a single man running a position could be responsible for a million people or so deciding not to get guns when they may have done so before is an amazing thing. The gun industry's use of fear is an amazing thing. And the fact that their people follow it is even more amazing. It's even more amazing. This is according to the FBI. This is from a Mother Jones article, by the way. I found this on Mother Jones today. This is from Brian Schatz. I hope that's how you pronounce his name. If not, I apologize. I can't see another way to pronounce it, but hey, I'm a weirdo from Jersey and I don't pronounce things right. So, according to the FBI, there were 520,000 fewer background checks in January than in November of 2016. 520,000 fewer background checks. Now, background checks are only done through licensed dealers. So this number could be higher of people who didn't buy guns when they might have. Then couple that with February, where there was almost 400,000 fewer background checks compared with a year ago. The gun industry has had to lay off people because, here's the thing. They can have months and months and months of growth and they won't hire anybody. But as soon as they have 1 month of downturn, people got to go. I need my money. People got to go. But it's hard to sell things when your only selling point is the government is coming for your guns. So when you get a guy in office like you trumpeted and wanted the entire time, your $8 billion a year industry is going to get hit. I mean, there were people that saying he was the world's greatest gun salesman. So, look, is this something that's going to trend in a big way? Some stocks are down, some have started to rebound, so maybe that'll be a trend as well. They definitely won't do as well as they did over the last 8 years. They just won't. There won't be a necessity for it because no one is going to be saying you have to go out and buy guns because Trump is coming for your guns. He's coming for your guns. So, good, less people are buying guns. Bad, the reason is because the black guy's not president anymore. And this is a quote from the article. This is from Igor Duzanowski from Financial Analytics. The big thing with the gun industry is that if you're not worried the Second Amendment is going to be taken down, then you're not in a rush to buy a gun. Right? I mean, it's nuts. It's nuts. So for 8 years, their gun rights were never taken away, not even a single bit, except the last year of his presidency saw the biggest spike in the gun sales, or the last 2 years in the presidency saw the biggest spike in gun sales. Yet the previous 6 years had shown you that he was not going to do anything. Now, he talked a big game, and he always talked, especially after a big disaster, but he never did anything really. Made it so mentally ill people can get guns. Who cares about that? I guess the mentally ill, but do we really want them buying guns? That was also been repealed, by the way, just so you know. I don't know if I mentioned that. So the gun industry taking a beating. They'll be back. Don't worry. Because in 4 years or blah, 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 when Trump resigns in shame and blah, 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 there'll be a Democratic president and Wayne LaPierre will be out there going, they want to take our guns. They want to take our guns. And I know what you're saying. Wayne LaPierre, why don't you do a French accent? Because French people are dignified, and they wouldn't say that. Plus, my French accent sounds a little bit Monty Python-ish. But they want to take our guns. That's what Wayne LaPierre says is a selling point. They're going to take our guns. Obama's coming for our guns. Coming for our guns. And now... Oh, God, folks, we've been having a great week, right? Yesterday, Comey came out and said, no, there's no wiretapping is nonsense. It's silly, it's ludicrous, it's nonsense, right? Gorsuch is being talked about today. We're going to do that on Thursday, get into that a little bit, wait till it all dust settles and all that sort of stuff, his religiosity and all that sort of stuff. He apparently snapped at Senator Leahy today, which is a good time altogether. But, folks, if you really, really want to have some fun, we're going to have some fun right now. Because, as reported, and I'm sure as you may know already, Tommy Lahren of The Blaze stupid ads. I don't want your ad. Now I have to get out of this. Really? Sorry about this. Apparently this ad doesn't want to go off, and this is for like Australia Airlines. So you better hope that I will never ever use Australia Airlines ever again. Australia.com, you're the worst. Will you guys stop with this, please? I fucking pay for internet. Will you stop preloading your videos and have them play whenever I turn on your page? You have to have an off switch. You have to have a place where I can say, I don't want videos to play automatically on my page. And so here we go. Back to Miss Lahren. If you don't know her name, this is going to happen again. Anyway, Tommy Lahren of The Blaze and her ridiculous show is suspended from The Blaze. Because it's kind of amazing, right? The things that we do and say. So she was on The View, okay? And she's talking on The View, and she says that she is basically pro-choice. She's like, if I want the government to keep away from my guns, I also want you to keep away from my body. She got suspended for that. Some of the batshit crazy things that Tommy Lahren has said in the history of her show, that's what she got suspended for. stay out of my guns, and you can stay out of my body as well. Now, the one thing you can't do in the Republican Party is have an opinion that's your own. You can't have one that is your own. If you do, you're going to get suspended. And when you come back in your mea culpas, oh, sorry, guys, I really meant that I'm against abortion. Blah, 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 blah. God forbid she have a mind of her own. God forbid. Then, so she is off the blaze right now, and there's a lot of talk that she's not going to get re-upped when her deal is up in September, I believe it is. And they're saying that she's not going to get re-upped because nobody likes her. I mean, if you've ever seen her, I mean, she's a very pretty girl, but it's got to be infuriating to talk to her, right? She's got to be infuriating. On to the next one, because it just keeps getting better. The Breitbart and InfoWars are being investigated as part of the Russia probe. Now, they're being investigated not for what you think. They're being investigated because because of the bots that sort of popped up everywhere during the election, right? So anytime that Trump would have a bad day, which was every day, there would be all these fake bots releasing all these links to fake stories that would link you to Breitbart News or InfoWars or the Kremlin, RT News, and Sputnik News. And they're trying to decide if Breitbart and InfoWars had any dealings with this, if their site was used, or if they had dealings with the Russians to create these bots and to create these stories that they would then feed. We now have the people who are in charge of counterintelligence division handling this part of the thing, because it's going to involve a lot of internet stuff that nobody understands except them. So Breitbart, InfoWars, under investigation in the Russia probe. Now, this may be nothing. It may be nothing. And actually, for its base, and the people who read Breitbart and InfoWars, they're probably going, yeah, I mean, it's exactly what the government would do, right? I mean, they're just going to investigate them because all of a sudden they got all these new followers, and they're like, they must be doing something illegal with the Russians. So, of course, big government's going to come in and investigate them. It just feeds their base's ridiculous nonsense. But don't be weirded out if this comes true. I know what you're thinking, Matt. I would never, ever believe that. Of course it could be true, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, of course. But people are going to be surprised. Because I'm not saying they colluded. I'm not saying. But they did do shady stuff with bots and links to their site. They had to have something to do with that. They had to have something to do with it because most of the stories, if you look at timelines, matched. They weren't like exactly the same, but like if Trump did something stupid when he said the thing about grabbing women's pussies, all of a sudden Hillary Clinton was selling children in a pizza shop. So, InfoWars and Breitbart under investigation. Phenomenal stuff. Phenomenal stuff. That brings us to our good friend and John Oliver favorite, Andrew Napolitano. Andrew Napolitano has been suspended and taken off the air indefinitely. Why? Because he said this.
3 intelligence sources have informed Fox News that President Obama went outside the chain of command. He didn't use the NSA, he didn't use the CIA, he didn't use the FBI, and he didn't use the Department of Justice. He used GCHQ. What the heck is GCHQ? That's the initials for the British spying agency. They have 24/7 access to the NSA database. So by simply having 2 people go to them saying, President Obama needs transcripts of conversations involving candidate Trump, conversations involving President-elect Trump, he's able to get it. And there's no American fingerprints on this.
Nope, none whatsoever, because they didn't do it. We all know that's untrue, as said yesterday by Comey, and everybody else who knows it's untrue. GCHQ denied it as well. Now, I know what you're saying. A spy organization denying something? You must be nuts. You know. Sometimes they tell the truth. So Napolitano is got gone because apparently he got that information from Russian state television. So we have a guy on Fox News talking about wiretapping where President Bush, oh, sweet Jesus, it's almost like fucking can't believe I'm saying this, but I can't believe I wish we had President Bush. President Trump is getting his information from Fox and Friends. And we know this because he talks about them all the time. And when he was questioned about it, he said, you should talk to Fox and Friends. Are you fucking kidding me? You're the president. Have you been told there is wiretapping? Talk to Fox and Friends. It's unbelievable. So he's gone. Gone. And it's great. Because what we're seeing is now, listen, the reason it's happening is not good. But Fox News taking Napolitano off the air because of saying something false is a fucking amazing thing that happened. Now, his was so egregious that the CIA, the FBI debunked it in front of Congress. But still, they did that. Now, the Blaze, it's just fun to see Tommy Lauren get suspended. Off the air for a week. It's a week of not having to listen to your mouth. And Breitbart and InfoWars, oh man, the perp walk that day. Oh, please, God, who I don't believe in, please give me a Breitbart perp walk one day, please. Please, Lord, please. And now it's time for...
It's time for the Batshit.
Hail Trump.
It means that what the Jews have, we have.
The worst.
Crazy Pants.
Perpetual war, corruption, and pedophilia party.
Help, help, I'm being repressed.
For some reason, homosexuality has become the issue for the left. It's satanic.
Brain games is now over.
Thing of the day. Oh, Scott Weiland. Anyway, on to the Batshit Crazy Pants thing of the day. This was actually from, I believe it was a week or so ago, around the 14th, but I wanted to hold on to it until we had Mr. Comey talk so that we could make fun of him while he said this. This is Frank Amedia. He is an Ohio-based pastor. He serves on the Christian policy liaison to the Trump. He was the Christian policy liaison to the Trump campaign last year, and he is declared. And he's also a member of POTUS Shield. POTUS Shield. By the way, if you've never gone to the POTUS Shield website, go to the POTUSShield.org website and freaking enjoy it because it is a glorious, glorious look at Americana. This is what he had to say. He's talking about a vision he had from God about wiretapping.
We are literally speaking into the White House. We are speaking into legislators. We are speaking into the Supreme Court. And the Lord says, you know a tree by its fruit, and you know the voice of the prophet by whether it's truth or not. And we can tell you that we're batting 1,000.
Yes, Lord. Yes.
Incredible stuff. I'll give you one that we can go public on now.
So they're in communication with the White House about stuff that he can't talk about in front of his people. POTUS Shield.
2 weeks before the inauguration, the Lord showed me the vision 3 times of bugging.
Now, he's not talking about people bugging out like, woo, la, 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 la. He's talking about bugging, the actual putting of surveillance equipment into somebody's office.
I saw the vision of a ghost-like figure running around the White House and putting pins in things. It came 3 nights in a row at 3 o'clock in the morning.
The music is fantastic.
I said, what is it? He said, they're bugs. I said, bugs? Yes. The second night, I looked into the face of the person that was putting them, and they were faceless. He said, it's a ghost. which is an acronym, as you well know, for a certain intelligence agency. And the third night when I saw it, he then showed me the sweeping of 3 times. And he said, tell them to sweep it 3 times. The first time won't do it, the second time won't do it, the third time, what's in the darkness will come to light.
Yes. Yes, Lord. Yes.
We were able to speak it into one of the highest authorities in land. And then the truth began to come out, didn't it?
Oh, it did, Lord.
It's not
it did.
all out yet. There's still
no.
more coming.
No, still coming.
The bugging that was discovered.
And this is later.
This was revealed through POTUS Shield 2 weeks before the inauguration. And the vice president was made aware of it. And then 1 week after the inauguration, the president's office received it along with the CIA. And they've received 2 of them. There's a third one yet that needs to be discovered and uncovered. This was on POTUS Shield before it happened.
So this guy's telling his constituents that he was visited by God 3 nights in a row and shown the bugging of the president's office, and that not only do you have to sweep once, not only do you have to sweep twice, but you have to sweep 3 times. 3 times to find all these bugs. And then he thinks that Trump is talking about him when he's saying the bugging that was discovered. There was no bugging discovered. There wasn't. Sorry. Your vision was wrong. Your vision was wrong. Maybe God was telling you to clean your house with all the sweeping. Maybe he was telling you to hang some pictures with the pins in the wall. And also your delivery is bad, right? Like, this would have been much better if we had a gospel choir behind us. They could be maybe singing something like this, And you'd be like, on the second night, I looked into the face of the person that was putting them, and they were faceless. And he said, it's a ghost, which you know is an acronym, as you well know, for a certain intelligence agency. And the third night I saw it, he showed me to sweep it 3 times. See, you would have had me if you'd have done it like that. But you did it like you were telling the saddest tale of woe ever. And that's why it's wrong. It's also wrong because it's just wrong. It's just wrong. Just wrong. Real quick, we got a couple minutes before we're going to get out of here. I just want to hit on 3 things really quick. First things first, NBA players, start playing, please. If you're not going to play, then please come up with a way to refund the money of the people who work very hard to pay a lot of money to watch you play. I'm not saying you shouldn't rest. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is we need to come to a middle ground here where working class folks who pay top dollar to see people like LeBron James and Steph Curry play mostly because the team they're playing charges more for those tickets. When you don't get to see them play, there has to be an avenue for you to get your money back. If Broadway producers who don't make as much money as NBA teams can do it, I think NBA teams can do it as well. We all know who the star players are. If they are sitting due to rest and not due to injury, the person can get their money back. On to our president, who keeps talking about Colin fucking Kaepernick. And I don't understand why. This was in Louisville, Kentucky the other day. Or was it yesterday? He said that no NFL team is going to sign Colin Kaepernick because they don't want a nasty tweet from Donald Trump. Colin Kaepernick was actually an okay quarterback last year. He was better than about half the league. Now, he kneeled during the national anthem. And if you know me, you know that I had no problem with it. Because here's the thing. The funny thing about people killing Colin Kaepernick about this is that when Trump said, oh, maybe he should find another country to live in. Well, but that's the point. Don't you get it? Don't you get it? That's what this country's about. It's supposed to be about that. It's supposed to be freedom of expression. Express your anger, your dismay with things that are happening to your people. You don't have to agree with it, but to say that he can't do it, to say that he shouldn't get a job because he did it, goes against the fundamental freedoms of our country. Just pretty simple. Pretty simple. And finally today, for our sort of good news, bad news story, Norway is the number one happiest country in the world. We are 14th. Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Switzerland, Finland are the top 5. Does that shock anybody? No, of course not, because they take care of their people. Their people are healthy. They're happy. Yes, they pay a lot in taxes, but they get a lot of services in return for those things, which makes them all fucking happy. And they're happy. Do you think it's all a coincidence that it's all right there with the sort of exception of Iceland? You want to hear what the bottom 5 are? Rwanda, Syria, Tanzania, Burundi, and the Central African Republic. Now, most of them can be broken down into 6 economic and social factors. Gross domestic product per capita, healthy years of life expectancy, social support, trust in government and business, the perceived freedom to make life choices, and generosity. If you read that list, you understand why the United States is 14th. We have no trust in our government. No matter who's in office, half the country does not trust the government. And that's their fault. I'm not saying it's our fault. Well, for some people, it's irrational. But for most of us, it's their fault for being untrustworthy. We have no trust in our big business either because we feel like they're going to screw us at every turn. There are women in this country, and it should be all women, who don't feel like they can make choices about their own body. And most of us only give so we can write it off at tax season. We are an unhappy country right now who is in a massive social war. We have a massive social battle going on for who's going to run this country. You'd think it would be over things like debt, and it would be over things like how we spend money on war and how we do things like that, but it's not. It's a social war we're having. We started out as a country of religious freedom that's turning or trying to turn into a religious country, and the two can't be together. They are not together. They can't go together. It is impossible. You cannot have a Christian nation and have freedom of religion because some religions are going to go against those rules and laws. We have all these things. And that's why we're 14th. Because our life expectancy is going down, even though we have more technology than we've ever had before, and that's because people don't have any access to it. The gross domestic product, we don't really make stuff anymore. We just import. Our entire... I can't say this for sure, but I would say that 60% of our economy is based on the service industry of some way or another. But we don't actually physically make stuff. I know we do, but not nearly as much as we once did, not even close. Social support. We're just going to keep falling in this because it's not like we're getting more social support, we're getting less. Just listen to Mulvaney. Just listen to Paul Ryan. Just listen to any of them. We are going to get less. And there it is. See, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Switzerland, and Finland, they get more for their money. They get more bang for their tax buck because they don't spend all their money on defense and weapons and killing. They spend their money on their people getting health care and schooling. See the difference? That's why we're 14, and they're the top 5. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. This has been the Batshit Crazy Pants Super Show. I am, of course, your host, Matt Stevens. You can always follow me on the Twitter at the Matt Show 365. You can also do the same on Facebook. I am also on iTunes now. And, of course, Spreaker.com. Search the Matt Show. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back Thursday at 7. Have a great night.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain. For we've received orders for to sail back to Boston, and so never more shall we see you again.